Hey, and welcome to today's podcast. This is on how to have stronger virtual presence. I have Peter and Rahul with me today. My name is Chaz, and we're going to go through here of how to have stronger virtual presence, why it's important for you, and how you can develop stronger virtual presence. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. Rahul, I'll start with you on how can people have stronger virtual presence and what is virtual presence?
Sure. Yeah. So virtual presence is how you look and how you sound on screen, how you look in a virtual meeting.
Mhm.
And these days, this is going to be how you show up to all your coworkers, to your manager, to a job interview. And so it's got to be top shape. It's got to look good. And one thing that we've noticed with our clients is that some of them have put in some effort into their virtual presence and others haven't, and it shows.
Mhm.
So right now, as you can see for both our backgrounds, it's really clear. There's good lighting. You can see both of us really clearly. It's not super distracting in any way, and that's what you want to be looking for with your virtual presence. And as Peter's talked about a lot in our company, this is the only thing that people are going to judge you on. This is it.
Mhm.
This is all you got, and probably all you got for the foreseeable future. And even after we get back to things, there's going to be so many people that are going to be virtual, and you're likely going to be having virtual calls with them as well. So it's really important to invest and take 10 minutes, 15 minutes just to get your setup right.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is one thing you would say for something they can focus on first with their background? One thing you would say is just what can they fix? One thing.
Just with their background.
Hmm?
So with their background, what I would recommend for all of you is making sure that you don't have a ton going on in the back because it can be really distracting. So a piece of art, a couple things here and there, a bookshelf, like if you have a bookshelf there with a couple things, that's
Hmm.
totally fine. It in fact makes it a little bit more interesting to talk to. I've been meaning to get a little bit behind me as well. But other than that, I would not recommend having, like a bedroom and things like that. I know there's certain situations, with what's going on, it's tough. What we've seen people do is maybe you are in a bedroom, that's all you got in your house, that's okay. Turn it around so that you're on the wall. So that is kind of weird,
Mm.
in your house setup, but at least you're not. I was doing an interview coaching with a client, and they had their bed and everything, and even though I was coaching them, it was still distracting. I was like, it felt weird that I could just see everything in their in their bedroom. So that's something that you want to be aware of in a professional context. Just flip your screen around or flip your desk around and make sure that it's just an easy to look at wall and it's not too personal.
Yeah, and why do you think the bedroom is not appropriate for a professional situation?
I think it's just giving you a little too much insight on the person a little too early, especially on an interview like that.
Yeah.
I think it's a contextual. So if it's yeah, professional, or if it's a work context where you've known the people for a really long time, maybe it doesn't really matter. However, I would say even there, try to make it look like, okay, they see you in the office. What's analogous to them seeing you in the office? It's probably not having them see your bed sheets and you didn't fold your sheets, so they see it all over the place. So that's what you want to be
Yeah,
avoiding.
absolutely.
Let me add to that. The background associates with you and your presence. And
Hmm.
here's how you can assess the truth in that statement. Whenever you see an advertisement for a drug on TV, and they start talking about the side effects, and they tell you it causes diarrhea, it causes headaches. What do you usually see on the screen? You'll see happy people running around and excited, right? And what
Hmm.
they're trying to do is anchor good feelings in the background to whatever they're saying. So it overcompensates for the side effect. Here, it's the opposite. You're sitting down, you're professional, you're interviewing for a position, and here's the background, your dirty laundry on top of the bed. So that background anchors on you and on your brand, and you don't want that. You want your background is either neutral, so it doesn't pollute your brand, or it's positive, so it enhances your brand.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And out of what different things people can do, what are some common objects or maybe not specifically as objects, but common themes people can bring in to their backgrounds just to give it that way it's not a white wall, but a little bit of a something. What are some common themes?
Interesting art with story like this painting right here is something I have, and people always comment on it, and I always tell them the story. This is a painting, and I was looking for a birthday gift for my wife, and I didn't know what to get her, and then I saw on Facebook that she liked this painting, so I contacted the artist and I bought it for her. Major brownie points. Now I'm using the same thing. I'm leveraging the same asset for virtual presentations.
Yeah.
So that's one way. Another way, let's say you are sitting in your bedroom and it's a tough situation we're in right now with the pandemic, and you're locked in and you have no other place except the bedroom, and you can't rotate your chair, so the background is your bed. And one way to cover that up is to use the background in Zoom. And I've seen clients do that, and it looks super professional, where they use the background and at the top it's the logo of their company. It's fantastic. Much better than a bed with piles of laundry on it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to see that in person or virtual.
Exactly.
Well, that's a great point. And the virtual background that you had said too, where the virtual background, we've all seen it before, where it's the tropical background or the company background, whatever it is. I think those are good to bring in. And one thing too, having it with a white background, a wall as the background when you're doing that is going to look a lot better than having it as an open room. Because where you get that cutting in and out and that choppiness is when it's trying to find the depth of the room and you have someone walking behind you. So I think that if you're going to do the professional virtual background like that, definitely have that white wall. But that is a great way to do it as well.
That's a good tip. Very good tip. Imagine if you have the let's say it's an ocean behind you, a picture of an ocean, virtual ocean, and the dirty laundry keeps popping in and out. It's pollution.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. Well, that's great. Well, thank you for that. That's such a good point too. And so I want to jump now to virtual presence, right? We have a little bit of the background covered now of what you can do there. So to help people with just the first thing that they can do to start having a stronger virtual presence for themselves. So what can they do in themselves? Maybe it's their body posture, maybe it's their eye contact. What are some things that they can do? Just starting with one tip. Rahul, I'll flip that to you first.
So one thing that you can immediately implement is how you're sitting. So that's right now, let's assume I'm sitting. One thing you can do is when you're sitting down is not be leaning back in your chair like this. Notice, like, even I just pretend I'm in the chair. Notice it creates a distance between me and you immediately, and it looks like I'm less engaged already. So imagine I'm trying to speak up in a meeting and I'm having trouble. I'm not helping myself by sitting back like this because it looks like I'm disengaged. It's the exact same thing when you're in an in-person environment sitting down at a table. And you see that someone's leaned in, maybe they're sitting upright, they look more engaged on the screen. So when I'm standing up like this, or when I'm even leaning forward a little bit, it shows that I'm in the conversation, I want to speak, and I'm listening. So that's an immediate thing that you can do. We tell clients this all the time. Instead of just leaning back in your chair, it's the simplest thing, just sitting upright and having an upright posture is going to help with your breathing.
That's a really good tip. And how can they be more aware of that? Because sometimes it's so habitual for people, they may not know, like, how can they start to catch themselves, or what can they do maybe on a daily basis or a continual practice to get better at that?
The simple one right now, I would say, is just to use the self view on Zoom or any of the video conferencing app. You can see yourself. So you can tell if you're doing this, or if you're leaning over in your chair like this or something like that. You can immediately tell you, oh, I'm doing that thing, and just be able to use that as a trigger and sit right back up. There's a lot of other things you can do. That's a simple one you can just start doing now. If you don't have it on already, guys, you should have the self view on. That way you can see yourself. Don't look at yourself too much, but every once in a while, we talked about a lot of other things, watching where your frame is and things like that, but it'll at least allow you to see what you look like on screen.
Yeah, absolutely. And Peter, I'll bring you in for this one. What are your thoughts here?
Also watch how you fit in the frame. Like, what's the point of having the camera if this, hi, my name is Peter, right? what's the point of that? Or seeing a forehead, or like I had clients who would just come in and say, "Hey, how are you?" I'm like, what are you doing? Get up here, right here in this space. So that's really important. Like just like we talked about the background, the way you come across is also important, and it affects how people view you and judge you and trust you and all of that. And it's important. And like Rahul said, the way you maintain this frame is by looking at the Zoom meeting at your own picture. That's there for a reason. It tells you, it's like a mirror. It tells you how you're fitting in this frame. And every once in a while you look at it, not to judge, you just to see like, oh, I'm looking at myself. Okay, I'm in the frame, I'm in the middle, I'm using my hands, the light is good, and that's going to be your standard.
Yes, absolutely. And glancing at yourself to making sure you're in frame is imperative. And one thing I do want to bring up too, because I hear this from our different clients, is, well, how do they not completely focus on themselves or get self-conscious if they see themselves? Because a lot of the times people will say that if they glance at themselves, it throws them off a little bit or interrupts them. So how can they just get more comfortable with looking at their picture non-judgmentally?
Yeah, it takes practice, and it takes desensitization. It's similar to hearing your voice for the first time. I don't know, Chaz, if you remember the time you heard your recorded voice.
Still rough. It's still rough for me.
Still rough. That's right.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I heard it was like elementary school. I privately recorded my friends in secret. And then I played the video. I played the audio for them. And the first thing I hear is my own voice, like speaking to them, trying to cajole them into saying something. And then I was on the ground just laughing. And they're like, "Oh, you sound like that. Do I really sound like that?" Yeah. And then over time, I just accepted that's my voice. And same thing with, you're gonna accept that's my image over there, and it's gonna be normal.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. Just acceptance of it, whether you like it or not. That's it's whatever is what it is, but just to accept it. That's a really great point there. And Rahul, I want to flip this to you. How did you first start getting better at virtual, like to improve your presence? I'm sure you weren't 100% when you came in. Maybe you were, maybe you weren't. But what did you do to at least things on a continual basis to improve on that?
No, I was perfect from the start.
All right, never mind. Peter, how about you? No.
So I'm trying to think here. So there's definitely the lighting. That was something that took a little bit of time to figure out. I have light coming in from the top here, which now I figured out to make it look really good, because I can have light right over me. So you want light coming in towards you, not in your background. So before, I'd have the other sunroof part open, and it would flash a lot of light onto my background and create a lot of back and forth. So if you've ever noticed that you're light one moment and then you get really darkened again, that's because that lighting in the back is screwing up that image. So that's something that took a little bit of time to figure out with lighting. Also changes throughout the day, right? In the afternoons, it's different than the mornings. So that's something that all of you need to be aware of as well. But that's something that took some time. And the other one was also watching my frame, so that to make sure that my hand gestures are always in the frame. Sometimes I notice, like, oh, I was doing this and it's kind of off, or I'm doing this and now it just looks like I'm doing something funny with my shoulders, and you can't tell what I'm doing. So that's another thing, a big one I noticed, is just watching my frame.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note of watching your frame too, like Peter and I were just chatting about, how was that for you, first getting used to it? What were some things you did to get used to hearing yourself or seeing yourself on camera and on frame?
One big thing was watching, in terms of watching my frame, was setting up my camera angle so that, for example, I can't push it back too far right now, but if I were, let's say I was pretty close to the camera, now I have to really go like this and put it up super high close to my face. So one thing I did to make it easier on myself is that I created some distance between me and the camera, so that, okay, I'm framed here, then I don't need to raise my hands all the way up here just to be able to see it. So that's something I did to make it easier on myself, to be able to use my hand gestures in a way that, okay, Maybe in an in-person environment, honestly, I would probably gesture on average down here, but my angle is just not there. So over time, I've just gotten used to, okay, on virtual, I'm probably gesturing up here.
That's great. Just to back out of the camera a little bit, give it a little more space, to give yourself more space for those gestures. And
Okay.
Peter, so what do you think about the the biggest thing that you hear with clients? Because I know you work a lot with different clients, from our executives that we'll have you work with and leadership to professionals that are really looking to step up their game. So for that person who is transitioning into a leadership role or newer to a leadership role, what are some things that you see come up that's most common for them? And then what is that tip that you typically give them?
It's the biggest thing I see for them is managing their ego. And I can relate to that. When there's a new medium, usually people who are successful, they get wary because, wow, I was successful in the previous environment. How am I going to show up in this new environment? And sometimes they think it's unfair, like, oh, I managed to develop my presence off camera. Now I have to manage my presence on camera. And you have to let go of both. One is your ego, just let it go, and also let go of this fairness, or argument. You're always learning. You're always going to be learning. Things are always going to be changing, and you have to adapt. And going back to the ego, I can relate to this myself, because for 15 years I've been a professional speaker, and I would go in front of people and groups, and I spoke in front of thousands of people. And then all of a sudden we had to do videos. And I remember the first time I did a YouTube video, my heart rate was gonna explode. I was worried that people are gonna hear it through the microphone. And then I worked through that, and then my ego, like, okay, I got better at it. I'm gonna make mistakes. I accepted that things are not gonna be perfect. And then I remember when I brought you guys in on the first video. Now it's like, oh, I have to perform not just for the audience, I also have to perform for my team. And again, I remember myself going from this Peter, normal Peter, to, hello, my name is Peter. And Mr. Robot shows up. It's because of my ego. And little by little, I had to let go of that. And it's okay to make mistakes. I'm learning. I'm developing. And I got better. So I give the same advice to our executives that we work with. It's the same thing. Just put your ego aside for a little bit. There will be a learning on-ramp here. But once you get over it, you're going to be totally fine. And you're going to have phenomenal virtual presence. Which you wouldn't get if you don't put your ego aside.
That's so true. And that's a really good point that you make there, because you can just be upset with the situation of, I made so much progress in my company, and I would make small talk in the hallways, and I would get myself in front of the right leadership. And, all those little things that you can do in person are now gone. So you miss that perspective of just the small talk. So it's like, how do you engage that small talk? How do you not be upset about that? And it's about adapting, like what you said too. So we're, this virtual environment, I think we're realizing it's here to stay. Even at the end of pandemic, a lot of companies are still going to be virtual, and there's still going to be a lot of meetings virtual, especially as we move into this more dissected area of business. Yeah, please.
Let me add something to that, just to emphasize the importance of putting your ego aside. We worked with a company with their executive team. During this pandemic, they wanted to shoot videos to the whole company and show people about how they're doing in their daily life, or show like their home, or show something they're interested in. And worked with the whole team. And I was worried coming in about the CFO, because super introverted, super shy. And then we ended up, I ended up training them. They ended up shooting videos, and the CFO did a phenomenal job. He was just walking around casually, showing his bookshelf, talking about his favorite book. Then he went to the backyard. He had some trees planted. He talked about the trees. And all of a sudden, this CFO looked like a human being. Phenomenal presence. The sad story is the CEO who I thought because of his confidence level, he would have no problem shooting this video. He ended up not shooting the video. And when I talked with him in private, he was worried about how he's going to show up. And to me, that was definitely something I need to look into in the future. Sometimes it's the person that you least expect does the video, and the person that you most expect to do a video will not do a video, and it's all because of ego.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and it's about putting your ego aside and just being okay with it and jumping in, and you know, this is here to stay. Well, that's great. Well, guys, on that note, wrapping up here, I really appreciate you diving more into virtual presence. I think the listeners have really good takeaways. And Rahul, I'll leave this with you. Final thoughts. What are your final thoughts to really help each person out there improve their virtual presence?
Well, depending on what time of day you're listening to this video, if you have time today for 15 minutes, spend the time to get at least the physical environment right. So get the lighting, get your background, make sure your sound is good. And people are not expecting, sometimes we get pushed back on, oh, you know, there's only so much I can do. I'm not in the production environment. You're not a movie producer. People are not expecting some crazy quality. Just make it look professional, make it look clean, undistracting. And trust me, it's going to have unconscious effects on the people around you.
Absolutely. And as Peter said earlier, no piles of laundry. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you got a lot out of today's podcast. And this was on Stronger Virtual Presence. We will see you next time.